Can anyone beat Carlos Alcaraz? Just too good.
Maybe even catch Djokovic.
Alcaraz had to struggle his way back from what seemed like an impossible position of cramping.
Carlos Alcaraz has posted nothing meaningful since May 19th, and this morning the rankings punished him for it. Number 3 now, with Sinner untouchable and Zverev walking past. The Canada entry list came out, no Spaniard on it. A medical check in Barcelona got quietly pushed back without explanation. Fans noticed everything. His team keeps insisting there's a plan, yet the man himself has gone quiet in a way we've never seen from him. This week, a tennis expert finally explains why Alcaraz might not take part in the Cincinnati Open, and his argument doesn't rely on gossip. It relies on something Alcaraz's own camp released, probably thinking it would calm everyone down. The clip did the exact opposite. "I'm not going to pretend the situation is simple, because the people closest to him are telling a completely different story. Two versions of one wrist, and only one of them can be true. Stick around, because whichever side you're on right now, I think you'll switch at least once before this video ends. Subscribe if you want tennis stories told properly, and drop your gut reaction in the comments. I genuinely read them. Now let's get into what really happened. The clip lasts barely 20 seconds. In the first video, Alcaraz holds a racket with no strings in it, swinging it slowly through empty air like a man reintroducing himself to his own arm. The second video shows him at a wall, tapping a ball against the concrete with roughly the force you'd use to hand a drink across a table. His camp put this footage out to show the world progress. What the tennis world saw instead was a 7-time finalist-level talent, a reigning double champion of the American summer, who 3 months into his recovery still couldn't trust his racket hand with a strung frame. Nobody planned for those 20 seconds to become the most dissected piece of tennis video of 2026, but that's exactly what happened, and every argument you're about to hear, the experts' warning, the camp's pushback, the fear spreading through the fan base, flows directly from that clip. To feel the full weight of it, you need to stand where this year began. In January, Alcaraz walked out of Melbourne carrying the one major that had always escaped him. The Australian Open completed his career Grand Slam at 23 years old, an achievement so rare that the list of men who own it fits on one hand with fingers to spare. Before the tournament, he said he wanted that title so badly he would trade the rest of his year to get it. The line got laughs at the time. It sounded like the harmless greed of a young champion stacking history early. Nobody in that press room imagined the season would actually collect on the offer, almost word for word. That Melbourne fortnight also confirmed something beyond the record books. Alcaraz isn't merely the best young player of his generation, he's the sport's most bankable face. The endorsement portfolio tells you everything about his standing. A global apparel giant dresses him, a racket manufacturer builds its flagship line around him, luxury watch and fashion houses queue up for his smile. Sponsors don't pay for rankings, they pay for magnetism. And no active player under 30 radiates it like the kid from El Palmar. Keep that in mind as this story unfolds, because when a player of that commercial weight goes silent for 2 months, the anxiety isn't confined to fans. An entire economy built around one wrist starts holding its breath. His start to the season justified every contract. A title in Doha followed Melbourne, and his record swelled to 22 wins against 3 defeats. Those 3 losses deserve a closer look, though, because hidden inside them is the other main character of this story. Daniil Medvedev stopped him in the Indian Wells semifinals. Sebastian Korda stunned him in the 3rd round of Miami, an upset almost nobody saw coming. Small cracks, easily dismissed. Then came April in Monte Carlo, where Jannik Sinner beat him in the final and reclaimed the world #1 ranking in the process. Watch that trophy ceremony back and you're watching a fork in the road. Sinner went one way and turned into a wall. Relentless, composed, nearly unbeatable through the spring and summer. Alcaraz went the other way, down to Barcelona, and the sport hasn't seen him compete since. Barcelona gave no warning of what was coming. He dispatched Otto Virtanen comfortably in the first round. Business as usual for a heavy favorite on home clay. Before his second match, the withdrawal notice appeared. The diagnosis, when it came, was an inflamed tendon sheath in his right wrist, the hand that produces one of the most violent forehands in tennis. On Instagram, he told fans that after reviewing the test results, his team had decided caution was the only sensible path, ruling him out of Rome and Roland Garros while they evaluated his progress. He called it a difficult moment and promised they would come out of it stronger. Fans read the statement and filed it under routine injury management. A missed Masters here, a skipped slam there, painful but survivable. The calendar had crueler plans. Madrid disappeared from his schedule first, his home Masters gone without a swing. Rome followed. Then arrived the announcement that turned concern into genuine alarm. On May 19th, Alcaraz withdrew from Wimbledon, not days before the draw, not after a failed fitness test on site, but a staggering 41 days before the tournament began. Professional players cling to Grand Slam entries until the last medical opinion runs out, because hope costs nothing and history rewards the stubborn. Surrendering the two biggest titles of the summer 6 weeks early is the act of a team that has seen scans leaving no room for optimism. One pundit at the time admitted he'd initially treated the injury as a nothing burger and confessed he was dead wrong, warning that right wrists demand a different level of respect than almost any other joint in the sport. May 19th matters for a second reason, and your intro already touched its edge. That date marks the last meaningful update his social media ever gave. For most athletes, going quiet online means nothing. For this particular athlete, it borders on a personality transplant. His entire public identity is built on visible delight. The grin in the middle of brutal rallies, the laughing exchanges with his box, the celebrations that feel less like triumph and more like a kid who can't believe his luck. Djokovic disappearing from social media reads as monk mode focus. Alcaraz disappearing reads as something being wrong, because joy that loud doesn't mute itself voluntarily. Fans felt the difference instinctively, and through June the speculation grew teeth. Some corners of tennis Twitter insisted he was quietly healing and staying off his phone. Other corners started using a phrase that chills every tennis conversation it enters, and we'll get to that phrase shortly. While the king sat in Murcia, the tour redistributed his kingdom. Sinner ruled the summer like a man running unopposed, hoarding wins while his greatest rival watched on television. One rung below, Alexander Zverev was performing quieter arithmetic. Every event Alcaraz missed leaked ranking points out of his total, and the German kept collecting. By the middle of Wimbledon, the gap between world number 2 and world number 3 had shriveled to 180 points. Zverev's charge to his first Wimbledon final settled the matter, and this morning the computer made it official. Alcaraz now sits at number 3, his lowest ranking since 2021, back when he was still the teenage curiosity rather than the sport's centerpiece. Absorb the strangeness of that for a second. He lost his ranking without losing a match, dethroned from a practice court 6,000 kilometers from the All England club. Injuries collect your health as a down payment, then return for your status with interest. Through all of this, one stretch of the calendar glowed brighter with each passing week. The North American hard court swing, home to the two biggest titles he currently holds. The logical runway for a comeback was the Canadian Open in Montreal, a Masters event starting in early August that would offer match play before his title defenses. On July 9th, the tournament published its entry list. His name wasn't on it, the reaction was instant detonation. Within hours, panic spread through every fan community from Spain to Argentina to the Philippines, and the theories ranged from sensible scheduling caution to a full shutdown of his season. The camp's calming statements suddenly had a cold, official document contradicting their tone. Into that precise moment of maximum doubt stepped the expert this entire story revolves around, holding a report that nobody in Spain wanted to read. Kevin Palmer of Tennis 365 published it, and the report cut through the noise because it refused to speculate politely. According to his information, the wrist was healing at a slower pace than Alcaraz and his team had hoped. His conclusion traveled further than any pundit had dared to go on record. The Spaniard was almost certain to miss the Cincinnati Masters as well, and a realistic comeback now pointed toward the final weeks of the season rather than anything in August. Read carelessly, that sounds like one more hot take in a sport drowning in them. Read properly, it's something else entirely, because Palmer's argument rests on mechanics rather than sources whispering in corridors. A professional forehand fires enormous force through the wrist joint, and it does so thousands of times across a single match, tens of thousands across a tournament. The load a competitor's wrist must absorb in a Masters event sits several multiples above anything visible in that practice footage. Palmer wrote that the images showed a player at the very start of a long road back, gently pushing at the ball, nowhere near the loading phase a return demands. The gap between tapping a ball at a wall and surviving best-of-3 warfare against the world's best cannot be crossed in 4 weeks. His case, stripped to one sentence, is that physics doesn't care about entry deadlines. Greg Rusedski then watched the same 20 seconds and reached for even darker territory. On his podcast, the former world number 4 broke the footage down almost frame by frame, noting that Alcaraz was performing movement patterns rather than genuine hitting, describing him as barely making contact with the ball, and pointing out that his service motion looked incomplete. His verdict on the bigger picture was blunt. He would be shocked to see Alcaraz at the US Open. Sit with the source of that sentence. Rusedski isn't an engagement farmer chasing clicks. He's a former Wimbledon finalist who calls the Alcaraz-Sinner French Open epic his favorite match ever played, a man openly desperate for this rivalry to resume. His doubt isn't hostility, it's fear wearing an analyst's jacket. He went even further, arguing that if Alcaraz needs the entire remainder of the year off to return fully healed, then take it, because no tournament on the calendar justifies the risk. Advice that drastic doesn't come from nowhere. It comes from a ghost, and the ghost has a name every tennis fan over 30 flinches at. Juan Martín del Potro was once the man who broke the Federer-Nadal duopoly at the US Open, a generational forehand attached to a gentle giant. His wrists, the right one included, swallowed his prime whole, dragging him through surgery after surgery until the player who remained was a beautiful, heartbreaking fraction of the original. Dominic Thiem provides the more recent scar. A US Open champion at the peak of his powers, he damaged his wrist in 2021 and never resembled himself again, retiring years later with his best tennis locked permanently in the past. Pundits haven't been shy about invoking both names in connection with Alcaraz, and the comparison lands hard because it isn't lazy. Same category of joint, same style of explosive, wrist-loaded power, same temptation to rush back for big titles. When people who watch those two careers dissolve start urging patience, caution stops sounding like pessimism and starts sounding like memory. So there stands one version of the wrist. Slow healing, mechanical impossibility, a season likely finished. Now meet the second version, and notice that it comes from people standing considerably closer to the man himself. Hours after the Canada entry list sent fans spiraling, Spanish tennis journalist José Morán posted a message on Twitter that functioned like a pressure valve for an entire fan base. Alcaraz is fine, and if everything goes as expected, his return will be soon. One short post and half the internet exhaled. The deeper rebuttal arrived through Punto de Break, which spoke with Álvaro Sánchez, a journalist from Murcia who describes himself as a close personal friend of the player. His account dismantles the doom narrative bolt by bolt. Skipping Canada, he explained, was never a setback at all, because the plan from the beginning targeted Cincinnati as the comeback stage. The team has structured July like a December preseason, with fitness coaches Alberto Lledó and Juanjo Moreno running Alcaraz through cardio, strength work, and physical foundations before hitting intensity climbs gradually week over week. Viewed through this lens, the footage that terrified the world flips its meaning entirely. Gentle taps against a wall stop looking like a broken champion and start looking like a disciplined rehab caught on camera at its scheduled starting point. Between these two versions sits a hinge, and the hinge is a doctor's appointment. Alcaraz was due in Barcelona on July 10th for a final examination with Dr. Ángel Ruiz Cotoro, the checkup designed to clear him for unrestricted training. That appointment slipped quietly without public explanation. Readers of Palmer's report treat the delay as confirmation that the wrist is misbehaving. The camp insists it changes nothing about the August blueprint, and a report in the Spanish paper La Verdad supports them, suggesting clearance for full-intensity training in El Palmar could arrive within days, barring last-minute complications. One postponed appointment, two mutually exclusive interpretations, and your gut has almost certainly picked its side already. Hold that choice loosely because one more detail complicates the expert's case considerably. Alcaraz's name currently sits on the official Cincinnati players list. He is entered in a tournament beginning in mid-August, which means both versions of this story are technically alive at once. A respected reporter declaring him almost certain to miss it, and tournament paperwork declaring his intention to play it. Entry lists carry no guarantees, and players withdraw from them every single week of the season. Still, teams don't typically enter a Masters event while privately preparing to bury the year. Someone in this story will be proven wrong within 4 weeks. And the genuinely strange part is that nobody appears to be lying. Palmer read the physical evidence honestly and reported what the mechanics suggest. Sanchez relayed what the camp sincerely believes. The wrist itself holds the only deciding vote, and there's a real possibility that even Alcaraz doesn't know the result yet, because the answer only reveals itself when the loading increases and the joint either accepts the force or objects to it. The stakes riding on that vote are enormous from every angle. He's the defending champion in Cincinnati, where 12 months ago he beat Sinner in a final the Italian couldn't finish, retiring while unwell after less than a set. That unfinished business has hung in the air for a full year, an asterisk both men surely want erased on court. Stack the US Open crown on top, and Alcaraz is defending roughly 3,000 ranking points across the two events, a mountain of math that decides whether his fall stops at number 3 or continues downward into territory he hasn't visited since he was a teenager. He has entered Cincinnati every year since his 2021 debut, and the tournament without him loses its marquee storyline, because men's tennis in this era runs on precisely one rivalry, and half of that rivalry has been a rumor since April. Broadcasters know it, sponsors know it, and the tournament's ticket office knows it best of all. Underneath the rankings, arithmetic sits the person, and this is where the story stops being about a joint. People inside his circle paint a picture of a player who is ravenously hungry to return, glued to the television whenever tennis appears on it, counting down the days like a fan locked out of his own party. That detail rings true because it matches everything the sport knows about who Alcaraz fundamentally is. His engine has never been Djokovic's cold obsession or the grinding duty some champions carry. He plays because the game visibly delights him, and the delight is so genuine that opponents have admitted it's disarming. 3 months of separation from the thing that defines him amounts to a specific kind of torture for a person wired that way, and therein lies the danger nobody can coach away. The quality that makes him the most watchable athlete in tennis is the same quality most likely to whisper that the wrist feels fine, that Cincinnati is worth it, that joy deferred is joy denied. Every voice urging patience is really arguing against his own nature, and they know it. So let's answer the title honestly. The expert has explained exactly why Alcaraz might not take part in the Cincinnati Open, and his case deserves respect. Slow healing, brutal load requirements, and the memory of 2 careers the same joint already devoured. The camp has answered with a structured preseason, an insider's reassurance, and a name printed on an entry list. My read after living inside this story for weeks is that the delayed Barcelona checkup is the only fact that truly matters anymore, and until Dr. Couture delivers his verdict, every forecast on either side remains educated guessing dressed up as certainty. If Alcaraz walks onto that Ohio court in August, remember what it means. His medical team cleared a wrist that couldn't hold a strung racket in June, one of the fastest final phase recoveries you'll ever witness. If he stays home, resist calling it a collapse, because walking away from one title defense to avoid becoming the next Del Potro wouldn't be a fall at all. It would be the smartest shot he hits all year. Now I want your verdict. Tell me in the comments which version of the wrist you believe, and whether you'd risk Cincinnati or shut everything down until New York, because I read every single reply and this debate deserves a proper comment section. If this breakdown gave you something the headlines skipped, subscribe and hit the notification bell, because the moment that medical decision drops, I'll be here covering it. See you in the next one.